I'd like to call this meeting of the Madison Board of Selectmen to order on Monday, September 23rd, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. Please join me in saluting the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record show all selectmen are present. Consent agenda, letter C. Warrants, number 7, 8/26/19, number 8, 8/26/19, payroll register number 37, 9/12/19, and number 38, 9/19/19.
Move to accept.
Second.
We have a motion to accept and a second to accept the warrants and payroll register as read. Any questions? Mr. Elias.
I take it our machinery's back in order?
Yeah.
We're back online? Okay.
Seeing no other questions, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Acceptance of the meeting minutes of September 9th, 2019.
Move to accept.
We have a motion and a second to accept the meeting minutes of September 9th, 2019. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor? Motion carries. Old business, Mr. Moody?
None for me.
Mr. Elias?
None for me, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Duchamp? All right, items of communication, Mr. Town Manager?
Well, Mr. Elias stole my thunder. I was going to tell you that the trio problems we had with our software have been fixed.
I do remember some stuff.
Oh, from the last meeting, we talked about some of the projects that we were going to try to collaborate with MEW on more power at the park and fixing the lights at the basketball courts. So I did meet with Jeff Melcher about that. So they're going to look into some pricing of new lights for the basketball court, and they'll actually set them. Then we would have to hire an electrician to go get them all wired up and remove the bad wiring that's there now. And as far as the outlets up at the park, we would just have to hire an electrician. There's nothing that MEW really needs to do up there. We would just have to hire someone to add to the availability up there. Road Commissioner has been out putting up parking signs, 2-hour parking in the downtown area from the light down to, probably the river's edge, that area. So at the next Selectmen's meeting, we'll have on the agenda a discussion, a couple of things. We need to revisit the fine. Now that the signs are out, has not been an established dollar number for a parking violation. The board will have to do that. And as you move up from the light further up Main Street to the junior high, we'll have to look at what the ordinance says, what's in place, and how the board may want to approach signage on the south side of Main Street across from the junior high. That would be the area where it says right now no parking from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on that side, but it has been for years a very popular drop-off spot where people park and then either they or their children walk across traffic to get to the junior high. So that'll be a topic of discussion on the next at the next board meeting. I just want to let the board know that I've been talking with Fire Chief Don French. Several other area chiefs have been working with the Farmington Fire Department, and they're actually having folks go and cover shifts there. So I know Don is, and a couple other of our firefighters are going to Farmington to help cover shifts while they get reorganized over there. And just as a scheduling thing, so the next select board meeting is scheduled 2 weeks from today, which would be October 7th. So technically that's the first Monday in October. But what this does is by having meetings in October on the 7th and the 21st, we avoid Columbus Day. And then that rolls into November by having a meeting on the first Monday and the 3rd of November, we avoid Veterans Day. So just to let you know that October, November, will be the 1st and 3rd, not the 2nd and 4th. That's all I got.
Okay, new business. Discuss revolving loan for economy trophy.
So when we last left our story 2 weeks ago, the question had come up as to whether USDA, which funded our revolving loan account back in 2009, would allow for a debt consolidation loan. Because when Mr. Hagopian had originally applied for the loan, that's what he suggested that his project would be, to consolidate some of his other debts. So I sent an email out to USDA, I got an email back, and I got a phone call back, and the short answer is they have no problems with debt consolidation loans. They do those, and so there's not an issue with that. Their issue with us was the same as many other small towns. We had not had a compliance review with USDA in 10 years, and the requirement is to have a compliance review every 3 years. So when they came down to visit, they were very nice, and it was a very positive conversation, but we found that we're out of compliance with our USDA loan on a couple of issues. One is the government requires that that money be separated out into a separate bank account. It can't be mingled with other, like our general fund or other revolving loan funds. That was new to me, and then as we learned a little bit more about this whole process, I realized that we've had funds mingled in together, and we've actually had 2 separate revolving loan programs operating out of the same fund since 2011. So USDA funds have some restrictions on them, and I can only guess from back in 2011 that the town started another revolving loan program separate from the USDA that didn't have the same restrictions on it because it was just funded with, or supposed to be funded with TIF money. So that program is called the Economic Development Loan Program. So we actually have our management plan for USDA, which started in May of 2009. And we have our management plan or guidelines of the Economic Development Program, which started in August of 2011. One of the problems or one of the things that we weren't compliant with USDA is they have a requirement that says you have to document that the applicant, whoever seeks to borrow the money, was not able to finance their project through a commercial lender. So they have to document that they've been to another bank, a regular commercial bank, and their project wasn't able to be funded that way. Then they can come to these USDA funds. The 4 USDA loans we didn't have this documentation. So they kind of leaned on us a little bit for that. So Kathy is in the process, as the treasurer, of determining how much USDA funds are mingled with the other revolving loan funds, because the USDA is requiring that we separate them. So she's in the process of working that, calculating interest. There was a write-off of about $26,000 or $27,000 in that fund for a bad loan, and she's going to work with Tammy and I to get a number together so that we can actually write a check out of that account and set up a new separate checking account just for those USDA funds. Until that gets all sorted out, I can't comfortably recommend that we loan any money from that USDA fund. In fact, I'd like to have it separated out and then have a discussion down the road as to, do we keep this fund open? We have one outstanding loan that's still having payments made to it, but there's 10 years left on that note. Or do we dissolve that fund, and when we do so, we have to give half of the remaining money back to USDA. So that's something that the board may want to consider in the future. The other thing that makes this complicated is, out of the TIF funds, the board has already approved a match of $100,000 to the $300,000 we got from CDBG to loan $400,000 to GOLAB. So we've committed $100,000 worth of TIF funds. Once we separate out these USDA funds, we don't have $100,000 left in that revolving loan account. So, and I haven't budgeted for $100,000 extra dollars to come out of TIF this year. So it kind of makes it tight. And so Tammy and Kathy and I met last week to talk about, all right, how is this going to go? We probably need to keep close tabs on our TIF balances as we move through the next couple of months into the budget in the following year. So that's pretty much where we are. So when it comes to Mr. Hagopian's loan, I can't recommend out of the USDA funds. If you wanted to do a loan out of TIF funds, that would be up to the board, and we would just have to find the money somewhere. Mr. Moody.
How did we get so far behind on this?
How do you mean far behind?
Well, when we was out to East Madison, we gave out those loans.
Those are grants.
All right, we gave those grants
Right.
out there. And then all of a sudden,
all of this economy trophy woke everything up.
Because that's a loan. It's two different funds. The matching grants come from a separate fund in TIF.
Yeah.
This revolving loan fund is a separate animal all to itself. It's funded by some TIF, some money from USDA, and actually there's some old leftover pearly bean funds in, when I point to, I'm talking about this is our ledger.
When's the last time it was used?
Last time a loan was given out of this account was 2012. That was just paid back last year.
So what good is it if we ain't gonna use it but once every 7 years?
Well, that's one of the things that the board should consider as far as we have not been in the loaning business, and I guess I'm not comfortable to be in much of the loaning business.
And I agree with you 100%, but at the same time, I think we have an obligation to keep up with the small business people in town and help them out as much as we can. If, I mean, I think that's part of our purpose to begin with. But as far as what you're talking about there, if we're only gonna use that every 7 years and then it's gonna be revamped up again, I don't know why the heck we're hanging on to it. Because it isn't doing anybody any good.
Well, there's one loan left out on the books, and just to give you a little bit of history of that, back in 2009, when the town manager, Norm at the time, and Economic Development, Joy, when they applied for this $50,000 grant, it was a 2-to-1 match, or 1-for-1 match. So the town had to loan out $100,000, and once they loaned out $100,000, then USDA would give them $50,000 back. So they started the program in the spring of 2009. By the end of 2009, they had given out 3 loans for a total of $45,500. So they're about halfway there. Well, the stipulation says you have to loan out that $100,000 all within 1 year. So they couldn't find anyone else to loan the money to. They asked for an extension. By the time the extension was getting close to losing a bit of that money, they approached a business person in town for a $54,000 20-year note. So a lot of people ask that question, where did that $54,000 loan come from? That loan was done so that the town could get their match back from USDA of $27,000. So that was the $100,000 that we're talking about that was spent out, and those are the only 4 loans that USDA is concerned with us tracking. That's why that original money and any interest and so forth has to be put into a separate account.
The original money is $100,000 plus any interest that we would have earned minus the $27,000 write-off, or whatever that one was.
Right.
Do you have a sense of what that number is?
Kathy's not finished yet, but from what she told me in regards to what she thinks the interest is, probably that net number is around $85,000. And if we had to pay money back to USDA, we'd have to pay them half of that back. So that's about $42,000 that we would have to pay back USDA if we wanted to dissolve that fund and be done with it. Then that remaining $42,000 we could put back into a revolving loan account that we operate by our own rules.
What would happen to the loan that is currently outstanding if we were to dissolve that account?
I don't know. I'd have to ask USDA about that, but they're aware of it, but I
Because
don't.
I'd hate to make a decision to
Oh, yeah.
dissolve that and have USDA call that loan,
Right,
because that's not helping any business in town.
right. That's something we'd have to figure out the answer to before we move forward.
I do think part of the problem comes with the USDA though, right? I mean, they're the ones that should be coming into us and doing these recertifications or but when you call them, that shakes everything up and they come running. So maybe we shouldn't have called them. I guess that's not what we can do about that now.
It was a familiar story in that USDA, most of their staff up in Bangor is new from 2017. So just after the new administration nationally, most of that office is there. There's only been there for a couple of years. And they're all just catching up to what the last group of people did there.
Mr. Gopi?
I think one of the problems, and getting back to your question, is I don't think the people in town, some of the businesses in town know that you loan money out, you have a revolving loan. That's why they never did it. It only came about, like you said, in 2009, and then they used it for years, and they brought the Department of Agriculture in it for some reason, and they went on. But when I did it in 09, it was just supposed to be tip money, that's why it was zero loan at the time.
All right, so our option is to,
Wait, I have one more.
Mr. Gopi?
On that 100,000, is that a loan to go
Go Lab.
lab?
That $100,000 that the town committed out of TIF is a match to the $300,000 we got from the state's CDBG program. So all of that wraps up to a $400,000 loan.
It's a loan, and what's the interest rate on that loan?
That loan is set at 2% over prime.
2% above prime.
Right.
All right, so the way I'm reading this is that we'll take nothing out of the USDA loan. We have our TIF money left. So if we choose to loan to Mr. Gopian, we're gonna need a motion to do that. Mr. Elias.
I think I'm kind of in favor of getting rid of USDA. Seems like a lot of headache to me. It's their money anyway, just give it back.
And even the folks at USDA agree that there's a lot of headaches. There's a lot more strings attached to it than I think that
Anybody knew?
anybody knew when they thought, oh, look, this is a $50,000 grant. Well, it's not really a grant, so.
No, because they want it back.
Right.
You were on board then.
Yes, I was.
Well, I think the other thing that happens, and it happens with the grants, and it happens with loans, is that, determining what is community development, what is business development, that's a big umbrella. And so what some people think is community development, fixing a sign, or putting in a parking lot, or doing something like that, or buying an ice cream machine, is questionable sometimes, and there's all kinds of opinions on what it should be. So it's hard to distinguish that sometimes. When we get those applications for those grants, it's very difficult looking at those.
So I guess my question is, if we do that, you're assuming that we have around 40 grand we can loan out of our own money?
Right, Kathy hasn't figured the final number, and then I have to get a formal, it's a lengthy process. I have to get the formal ruling by the board to dissolve it, and I have to submit that in writing to USDA. They'll want all of our numbers that Kathy's gonna pull together, and then they'll do their calculation to determine what they want back. But if it's 50-50, which I assume from the emails I've got, that's the way it is, it would be 42,000.
Plus half of the loan that's still out.
Right, that's what I've got to figure out the details on, how that affects that loan that's still outstanding.
Okay.
All right, so where are we at?
I think I'd like to make a motion that we move forward in dissolving USDA, our tie with them. And doing that, we'll pay back their money. Maximum's gonna be, should be around 50 grand, right?
I would assume.
That should leave us somewhere in the $35,000 range, somewhere in that. So we would have money to loan to Mr. Gopi. Am I correct?
In theory, you're correct. The only caveat is I don't know how that will affect the outstanding loan that we have right now. That $54,000 loan, which balance now is around $32,000. I don't know how that dissolving this affects that.
Okay, then 32,000, we should be paying them 16 of that.
I don't know.
50-50, right?
I know, but now we're into questions I don't know the answers to.
But if we're only loaning out 15 grand of the 30 some odd thousand, we should have enough to cover that.
Again,
Right?
In theory, yes. But until I get the answer in writing from the federal government, I won't know for sure.
You won't know the amount, but we'll have the money that we have money we can spend right now.
You have TIF funds that you could spend right now. However, much of that TIF, those TIF dollars that are in the TIF account right now have been allocated already for highway projects, to offset several of the articles that are passed at town meeting. So a lot of that TIF money that's there has already been allocated.
And when do we get another check for TIF? September?
We received one in September. We'll receive a large one in December, January, when the Betty benefit comes back in.
But you've already factored, excuse me, you've already factored that into the budget.
Right.
We passed the TIF budget, so.
Correct. Based on those.
If we're gonna make a
revenues.
change, then we need to go back to the budget document to make sure that
Right.
we're not.
In the TIF budget that this board passed, there was no extra money to go toward the revolving loan fund.
So Mr. Elias is correct. We had to dissolving this USDA account. Wouldn't it be in our best interest to get that information, how much it's gonna cost before we loan any money out?
I heard 80 some odd $1,000, and I know we got half.
Well, and then if they have to pay, if somebody has to pay that loan back though, that's out. I mean, that person's been paying.
And they still will pay. Just because we dissolve that revolving loan fund doesn't mean that we absolve them of their debt. Right?
But would they pay it to us or they pay it to USDA?
And that I don't know. That's a good question.
But who are they paying it to now?
They're paying it to the town.
That becomes a different thing. Mr. Duchamp.
Mr. Elias has a motion on the floor that does not have a second, but my comment would be, it would make sense to me that before we move forward with anything, whether we move forward with suspending or talking about giving a loan or anything like that, that we have clear information as to what is going to happen. We dissolve the loan fund. I'm not necessarily opposed to dissolving the USDA loan fund, but I'm opposed to supporting a motion to do that, for this board to say do that, because if you find out something, if the town manager finds out something in the process of figuring out how that is gonna happen, that's gonna have a really significant impact on either a business owner or on the town from a budgetary perspective, we've already made the motion, we've already said do it. So he's gotta do it regardless, unless we come back in here and rescind the motion. I would much rather see us instruct the town manager to come back to this board with accurate information, with the detailed information that we need to make a decision on A, the dissolution of the USDA loan fund, B, what do we have left for money to provide a revolving loan to a business person, regardless of who it is, whether it's Mr. Gopian or whoever, that we could in fact say, yeah, we've got money to do this. We're just coming out of probably one of the toughest fiscal periods that we've had. And I just don't want to make moves that are gonna put us back in a hole. I mean, I'm not interested in borrowing money to lend money out. And we don't have a line of credit to fall back on. You know, we saved some money from a carryover to add to what our surplus was gonna be, or what our carryover funds, or whatever fancy word you guys wanna call it. So that in the event we have an emergency, we've got a little bit of money to deal with. So I don't wanna play games with that. I wanna know the real story before we make a motion here.
Tim, do you have a?
I can wait for November or two.
Okay.
I can roll into that.
All right. Mr. Mood?
It's, is it that it took a request like Mr. Hagopian's to wake up this matter? It's just been sitting there fizzling until somebody requested some money, and then it woke up all this big problem that we're talking about and nobody knows the answer?
The board's direction to me at the last meeting to contact USDA
Right.
is what brought this all to light. Had the board made a decision to loan anyone money, I would have just continued to do it the way we've been doing it for, 5 or 6 years ago. I would have followed that same pattern. I've never been through a loan process since I've been town manager.
Yes,
All
and,
those
and I was
years.
guilty of asking you to get a hold of USDA and say, can we or can't we?
Right.
And it seems like we woke up this ugly little giant in here that nobody knew was sleeping.
Right, and I think it was a good thing. Obviously, if we're not.
Yeah, because this is a mess as far as I'm concerned.
If we're not in compliance with the federal program, then it's incumbent on us to get in compliance with that federal program.
And get rid of it.
And if that's the option that we wanted to do.
Who wants to keep playing with this?
And again, I think some of the blame has to go to USDA.
Oh,
They're not keeping up
and I
with
ain't
it.
blaming anybody
Yeah.
specifically. I'm just saying this is a mess that we don't need. My other question is how long does that businessman have to wait before he has a permanent yes or a permanent no, whether he can get this request?
I mean, that really is up to the board. I mean,
What's the board got to do?
Like, first of all, we have a motion by Mr. Elias.
Yeah, but it hasn't been seconded, so that's
Okay,
okay.
so that's
Yeah.
a dead, okay, so,
So let me just add a bit of information. I think Tammy was going in this direction. Back in a meeting in East Madison, when the board was deliberating over all of the matching grant applications, there were 7 applications. We had enough funding in the matching grant program to do 5. Then we moved on to the next discussion, which had to do with the interest that had accrued in this revolving loan account. And so the motion was made based on our understanding of the money. The motion was made to transfer $11,000 in interest from the revolving loan account to the matching grants to allow for the funding of those extra grants. So we awarded all 7 grants based on the fact that we thought we could transfer the interest over from the loan account to the matching grant account. The lady from USDA on Thursday made it very clear you cannot transfer money out of that USDA revolving loan account, which is another reason why we need to separate it out from what we've got in there. So at this point, as the awards come in, that people have spent the money and spent their part, and the town is gonna give their part of the grant that was awarded, we're spending out of that $25,000 pot. But until we figure out what to do with that interest, we're gonna run out of that money and have to pull it from somewhere else because the board is already committed to award those grants. So it is convoluted, and there's a lot of, and it's unfortunate that Mr. Agopian was the one that, whether it was him or any other business in town, once we contacted USDA and found out what the rules really are, it would have affected anyone that came in and made this application.
Elias.
So then to answer Mr. Moody's question, are we going to be able to know this answer by our next meeting,
I would hope so.
which is the first Monday of next month?
Right, 2 weeks from now.
So we are gonna ask the town manager to come back to us with a plan to pull out of the USDA. And we'll take a vote on that night. What it's gonna cost us, how much we have to send to them, and how much we have left. Is that reasonable?
Yes, that's
And
exactly right.
We'll have that, and we'll make a decision on Mr. Gopian's loan at that point.
So basically what you're saying is that businessman will have an answer on the next meeting.
We hope so. So the answer will be what it will take to pull out of USDA.
Right.
All right.
Right,
You are the revolving loan committee. This
Yeah.
board of selectmen is the revolving loan committee.
yes.
You can make a decision to loan him $15,000 at any meeting.
Yeah.
You just have to know where we're gonna pull it from.
That's right. But and I agree, the first step that we need to do is we need to get rid of this mess.
At least clarify.
And I think that pretty much of a consensus here.
But, so the questions are that, how much do we have to pay back?
Mhm.
Yeah,
How much will we have left?
Mhm.
What about the outstanding loan? That is now, what happens to that?
Mhm.
for that. Anybody else have any other questions that they'd like answered?
Just a question on the interest that he mentioned. Do we have to put that back in somewhere?
Well, they made it very clear that when Kathy calculates the balance, it has to include all the interest. My assumption is the interest is gonna be split 50/50.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Elias?
Yeah, I guess that goes to number 2. Talking about that interest which we pulled out to pay the other 2 people their $5,000. That's what you want to address, right? Like the old Italian would say, who's gonna pay?
Yeah. It'll look great for a little while.
As Albert would say, who's gonna pay?
You wonder why.
All right, that's it on that, I believe.
In the meantime, Mr. Gopi. we'll
October
keep the light
7th,
on.
Mr. Gopin.
We'll keep the light on.
All right, number 2, discuss matching grant award for Hearth and Home.
Actually, since the time this agenda was printed, we've had a letter from Hearth and Home saying that they have completed their project, and a letter from R&B Homes Source, Renee Bristow, saying that she has completed her project, and a letter from Brookside Dental over on Jones Street, that they have completed half of their project. So they're asking if they can get half of their award money first. Dr. Turk's office on Jones Street, he's retired and now it's Brookside Dental.
Okay, so you threw me for a loop there for a minute.
Sorry.
Doesn't take much.
So,
All right, so we have
so if the board is so inclined, since Hearth and Home and R&B have done their projects in full, I would need a motion to write a check to Hearth and Home for $4,920 and to R&B for $4,650.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to award the grants to Hearth and Home, or pay the grants to Hearth and Home of $4,920, and to R&B Home Source for $4,650. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
So now my question is, and I told Debbie Sylvan from Brookside Dental that I would ask, they have completed about $5,040 worth of the work. They've got another $6,000 or $7,000 they're gonna do in the spring. Most of that was building upgrades to the office there on Jones Street. I don't think, from looking back at the history, I don't think we've done this before. They're asking for a partial payment. They were awarded $5,000. They're asking for $2,520 now, and then the remainder once they finish their project in the spring.
I'll make that a motion. We pay them. I mean, if somebody came in here with a $5,000 project, we'd give them half, right? Okay.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to award to Brookside Dental, pay Brookside Dental $2,520. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. All right. We done?
We don't.
Okay. Number 3, set general assistance minimums for 2019, 2020.
This is a work that the board does every year in September. In your packets, you saw the current general assistance maximums and the proposed for 2019-20. Most of this is, if not exactly the same as it was last year, probably less than a 2% increase, which is normal. The one thing I will add that does affect our general assistance budget more and more each year is what the state requires that we pay for cremations. Now the allotment is if someone can't afford to bury a loved one, they can come to general assistance for up to $1,300 for a cremation.
All right, looking for a motion for general assistance maximums.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the general assistance maximums for Somerset County from 1920.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the general assistance maximums for Somerset County for the year 2019, 2020. Any questions?
Yes, I
Mr.
guess I
Wallace.
do, Mr. Chairman. Tim, you just said something about cremations were up to what?
I think that last year they allowed around $1,100 for cremation, now they allow up to $1,300 for cremation. It's not on that tally sheet. It's
Oh,
on-
no, because it says burials here, 1475, and,
Right.
okay.
All right, seeing no other questions, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
There is a signature page
Okay.
that has big writing on the top. So,
If it doesn't, my name ain't gonna be on it.
All right, discuss reestablishment of the Board of Assessors.
this is a topic that the board brought up at a previous meeting, and I put in your packet just a little bit of the history on it. In your packet is a copy of the special town meeting minutes where this, the assessors were essentially dissolved, and the town's assessing functions were transferred over to the Board of Selectmen. So that took place on February 25th, 2015. There was a petition that was received at the town office and had the required number of signatures on it, and that was taken in about November of 2014. And as you remember, that was pretty much a result of the drastic loss of valuation at Madison Paper in August, September, October of 2014. So that's the history of it.
Questions, motions?
Yeah.
Mr. Elias.
Question. I don't understand this Article 2. Shall the town revoke the prior town meeting vote
Yeah.
to elect assessors to the Board of Assessors? It
So-
said, Selectmen recommended no. Why wouldn't you want to revoke the old Board of Select? I don't understand this at all.
So,
It's a process.
back at this special town meeting, when a petition, now first of all, let me back up, I checked with Kathy on this. The clerk, town office, we cannot offer any advice to a petitioner. So if a person calls and says, I want to start a petition, all Kathy can say is, this is how many signatures you need. We can't help them with what it says. We can't help them with the wording. Obviously, we can't help them collect signatures. So that's all on the person. Because whatever the wording is on the petition has to go to town meeting. So this Article 2, shall the town revoke the prior town meeting vote to elect assessors to the Board of Assessors? That was how the petition was worded, word for word. So that is required that you, whatever the petition is, if the selectmen say, yep, we'll take it to town meeting, has to go word for word. MMA, their recommendation was, don't use that language because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't give you enough clear direction. So MMA recommended that you use the wording that is in Article 3, which gives clear direction as to who will do the duties of the Board of Assessors and when that will start. So that's why the recommendation was to vote down Article 2 because it wasn't sufficient and pass Article 3.
All right.
Denisha.
I think that because this, actually, the impetus for this action came from the taxpayers by virtue of a petition, I think that if the taxpayers want to reestablish a Board of Assessors, then they should create a petition and get enough signatures to get it on town meeting warrant. I'm not willing to drive that process from this board. I don't think it's appropriate that we do that. This was eliminated by taxpayers, and if they want it back, then they should make the effort to do it.
Can I ask who eliminated the police department?
Mr. Elias.
I'd like to ask a question. Who eliminated the police department?
The voters at town meeting,
That's correct. So the voters at town meeting can put this back.
they could. Right, they could, they certainly could, but it would have to be put on the warrant, and the warrant is controlled by this board of selectmen.
First of all, you and I have had this conversation about this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to remind you that the first question you asked me when I walked into your office after I got re-elected to this beautiful board is, what do you think about the assessors, being an assessor? And I told you I didn't want to be one. And the reason I don't is because this board right here is more on and off than the Board of Assessors. I mean, you had Richard Bartlett was on there forever, and Raymond Susi, Kathy Wilson, they've all got years, because nobody wants to do that. We know nothing about being assessors. I know nothing about being assessors, and I work in building materials my whole life. So I think that, unlike Mr. Ducharme, that we can take this to town meeting and see what the taxpayers want to do. If they don't want to have us do it, then they'll get their assessors back. That's my view.
Moody.
I'm agreeing with Mr. Elias, and I'll stipulate why I am, is because when I first come back on this board, I was told that I was going to be an assessor. And I asked, what the heck does an assessor do, and how does he go about it? I had no expertise, no knowledge, no training or anything as far as being an assessor, and here I am sitting on the board representing the people of this town, and I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So I took it upon myself to gather a little bit of knowledge. I went out to see Mr. Van Tynen and sat in his house for 2.5 hours so he could just give me an idea of what the heck I'm talking about and what everybody else is talking about, so I can understand a little bit of it. And I don't think that the Board of Selectmen, being a Board of Assessors, also is fair to the townspeople because of the rotation of, I might be here 3 years, and what am I gonna learn as a Board of Assessor in 3 years? And then I'm gone, then a new person keeps coming. So you've got a rotation of people that have no knowledge of what they're doing to represent the people that put them into office. It's ridiculous. It really is.
I will take the other side of that. The person, in my opinion, who is most necessary is the assessor's agent. The rotation that you're talking about can be the same on the Board of Assessors. It can be, it could be. I mean, we had new people come on at the end. I mean, I think Raymond got done. I mean, I don't use Bob's name, but Bob came on. So, I mean, that rotation can happen on any board. And I think any board has the same lack of knowledge that you're speaking of. The sanitary board, anytime you rotate people, sanitary, water, selectmen, assessors, school board, anytime. So I mean, that's the nature of the beast. The beast is that you have citizens who can be elected. And the key is, as with the selectmen, the key is the town manager. And the key with the assessors is the agent of the assessors. In my opinion, I mean, we don't have to agree, but that's the key person. And that person works through giving the information to the board. And that's how you become educated in that, or taking the MMA workshops that they provide. Smoothie.
And how many of this board go to these MMA workshops to learn about Board of Assessors? Number one. Number two is, whose idea was it to begin with that this Board of Assessors was broken or inadequate?
I don't think the board, I'll answer it, but, and again, this is my opinion. I don't think the Board of Assessors was broken. I don't think the Board of Assessors was broken. I think the state passed laws that didn't allow, not even our former town manager attending the assessors meeting with Madison paper, to come out of that meeting and share with the Board of Selectmen what was going on. I mean, as a member of the board that night, coming out of there was nothing the Board of Assessors could do. I mean, they could have said no, but they didn't, and they chose to do that, and that's within their right to do that. But coming out of that was a very devastating evening, when they lowered not when the mill closed, when the valuation was lowered. And not having that prior knowledge was, to me, devastating. And those laws were passed by the lawyer that we're fighting in our case with Madison paper. He put those through the legislature somehow. And Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, they signed a confidentiality statement, and our former town manager signed the same one. And there was nothing he could do, or nothing they could do, to share that information. Yes.
Okay, you said that you don't think it was broke.
No.
Okay.
I think the laws put in place by the people in Augusta broke it down.
The only thing that was broken down is you couldn't tell the Board of Selectmen and the public the reasons for you, or the assessors, reducing by 140 some odd thousand $1 million, right? Okay, so if it wasn't broken, to me then, it was a knee-jerk reaction to something these guys couldn't change. They couldn't help.
I guess so. We're not going to agree. I'm not going to agree on that. But you know, it's the way it is. I mean, I think that the selectmen have the need for that knowledge. If whatever business goes through that same thing again, no matter how big or how small it is, and we don't have to point fingers at something was broken. It was because of the laws that were created, manipulated by a person who manipulated the whole system. And there's nobody on that Board of Assessors that was part of that. They were victims of that. So I mean, if we want to make a motion, let's make a motion and move forward. If the board agrees to go forward, then let's do it. But I think if we get a petition from somebody, and that's the way this went to the board before. Smoothy?
No, I better not say it.
You can. I don't know.
No.
Yes,
no.
sir.
If there wasn't camera on, I'd say so.
Leon Dorr, I live over on Adams Road here. Question for you then, since we're talking about whether you guys are capable of determining value through being the Board of Assessors, when you determine valuations of properties, when you deliver TIFs and vote on TIFs, how are you determining whether it's a good idea or not based on tax valuations? Who's making that determination when you sit there and say, yep, this is what this property is going to be assessed and valued at, so you know that you have the money coming in?
The first person that does that is the assessor's agent. And that's the person that does that form of work.
Right.
And they they put that out to you, and if you question that, then you go to her or that person and you contest that.
Right, so to my point is that what you're currently doing now, the system you have now in place, you're valuing the agent's position. You're saying that you are not an assessor and you don't understand, but what you're currently doing is you're valuing their opinion and what they're telling you, and you're making a decision as an assessor based on what they're telling you.
Exactly.
So ultimately you are acting on what your duties are, and you're comfortable with it at this point.
Right.
I'm just trying to give you a different view,
Yep.
that's all.
Solution.
And to Mr. Dorr's point, that's exactly the way the prior Board of Assessors operated. Now, they had several people that had long tenure on the board, but when the assessor's agent came with information, Bob, you were on that board when the assessor's agent came with information, you took that information and you made your decision based on the information of the quote professional assessor that we hired to provide you that information to make those decisions. So I'm in agreement. I think that, you know, we have that same professional assessor's agent, if you will, who's advising us in doing those things. So I'm not uncomfortable with decisions that we make based on what our current assessor's agent tells us.
I'll answer that, Jack. This is just an opinion. And the way I look at that is the agent that we have brings that to us with a recommendation. What knowledge do we have whether that's right or wrong? Whether it's a current or it's a valued assessment? How do we judge that? How do you judge that? You're going on faith, basically. You're just going on her faith, that she has done a good job and she knows what she's doing. Because how do you challenge her?
I think you are all the time. You went with that with Mr. Van Tyne, you had to. I mean, the only other way you can do it is you can put a reevaluation in place. Hire a third party to come in and do that. I mean, I don't know. Your expectation, in my opinion, of the other board is way higher than it should be. Well, what you think they know is way higher than what it should be. I mean, that board can change in an instant. Somebody passes away, somebody quits. I mean, this board can change in an instant. I mean, we're all on a banana peel up here. Our health is all on a banana peel up here, except for maybe Jack.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
He's the banana.
Go ahead.
A couple of observations. Before we go down that trail. A couple of observations. I was talking to Shirley the other day. She has probably served, she doesn't currently serve with this many, but she's served about 30 towns in the state. And it's her experience that the majority of the towns she works with are selectmen assessors. They're one and the same. Even though Madison and Skowhegan has traditionally always had separately elected board of assessors, that's not the norm in the state. A town our size like Jay has always had selectmen and assessors do the same duties. So it's not unusual for this type of setup. And they're all layman boards. This board is a layman board. You have your background information. And what I experienced watching how you worked with our assessor's agent over the years is if she brought to you a recommendation on an abatement or a change of value on a home, you all had information that she didn't have. You knew the family, you knew the people, you knew that house, you knew the interior, the exterior. You knew a lot more about it than I think you're giving yourselves credit for. So I've seen this Board of Selectmen function with that collective historical knowledge that any board would have, especially if your assessor does not live in the area. We were very blessed for years to have Bill, who lived in and worked in this town, but that's no longer the case. And if you were to ask me, based on what I know of the experience that we've had for the last 3.5 years, with the abatements from Madison paper, Somerset acquisitions, most likely Eagle Creek, I would say it's imperative that the selectmen have first-hand knowledge about what we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of legal funds for. Not second-hand knowledge, not a report from another board, but first-hand knowledge. And taking my town manager hat off as a resident of the town of Madison, as a taxpayer, I want the Board of Selectmen to know exactly what's going on in all that stuff.
So basically what you're saying is that everything was okay until the mill went down. Then everything was not okay.
As I said before, it was the change in the rules that came from Augusta that said that you cannot share with your selectmen. And you have to sign. You have to sign this stuff.
Yeah, I understand that
I
part.
mean, it wouldn't have mattered who was on that board. This would have happened.
Yes, I understand that part.
And,
I do.
and again, the Board of Assessors was not broken. Please don't, it's the rules that came down.
I think I would agree with that. I think it was the change in the law, because it all happened in the same year.
Mr. Gopin?
Yes, in the spring, I forget the year, but anyway, they went in, they signed a confidentiality ruling on it. And basically, that was it, and that's when they talked about reduction in taxes. And George is right, about $140-something million. And so when they came out, of course, everybody wanted to know what went on in the discussion, and then that's when came up with lowering the taxes. And then that's when Barbara Gopi got on the board after that meeting. But that's basically what went on. And the Board of Assessors worked great. I think it was great because nobody wanted to be on it. And the people who were on it wanted to be on it, and they were really, really good. Bill was good, and then Dick Bartlett kind of broke down what he was saying so we could understand it. So it worked out real well. I mean, it was a good group of people that worked 1 year with, but it was a good little board. And it wasn't, and I was right, there's nothing you could do, it was just bad timing. That's all that was.
All right, so do we have a motion to send this forward, or do we have a motion not to send it forward? Or no action? Thank you, Mr. Gopin.
Maybe I should say I don't care, because I'm gonna be here next year. I just think we need a board of assessors, that's all.
Okay. All right, no,
No, I just feel like I'm banging my head against the wall here.
we don't want to do that.
Nobody's listening.
Oh, we're listening, I'm listening.
I'd like to know the chairman's view of our previous board and how often there was a change of face on that board. Can you remember ever anybody changing? And the only reason why Mr. Gopian got on is because Raymond Susi retired.
Well, but,
You
I'm not gonna go-
made the statement that
I'm not-
that can change every time.
right, and that's.
How many people run for that position is what I'm saying.
But I didn't say that. What I said was, there is potential for change all the time. Just like there's potential here for change. There's potential for change. It doesn't make it right or good or whatever, or bad, that they all stay. But they could. Obviously pass away, not seek
No.
re-election.
We know all that.
So all that stuff can happen. It isn't.
You know what
It's the agent, that's the
you know what
key.
you're doing right now? You're doing what David Barry says, smoke and mirrors.
No,
We know all that stuff.
No, I'm saying the agent is the key to the whole thing. That's the key.
Yes, but like Mr. Moody says, that agent comes in here and he, maybe I can't even say those words anymore, that's what I understand. That person, okay, tells us something. Do you know that what that person is telling us? Can you question that person?
I certainly can.
You can, but do you have the background and the knowledge, because have you gone to the classes down at MMA?
I have not.
Case in point, all those people that we had did.
Well, maybe that's when.
They were assessors.
Maybe that's when we have to do that. Maybe we have to.
Yeah, like we've got all this time that we can do. Why don't we become the planning board also? We'll do everything in town, right? We'll get rid of all the boards, we'll do everything.
All right.
That way we know
Yes,
everything.
yes.
So with that rule change, so the state of Maine changed the rule stating that, is that where the confidentiality came into play?
Yes, correct.
So what you're saying is if there's a board of assessors moving forward, that any discussion between a business and the board of assessors is confidential from you guys.
Yes, correct.
So you guys are saying that you're comfortable with the board of with the select board, not knowing. Right now, you're saying that we need to trust the agent. Don't roll your eyes and just listen to me.
Okay, go ahead.
So you're saying that the agent, whether the chairperson or anybody else on the select board, is going to believe the agent. But you're okay with the planning board giving you an unfounded recommendation to move forward on a piece of business. Because you're going to have to take their word on it, and you're going to have to assume that those people are educated in what they're doing, and that they are taking the classes, and that they're actually valuing their decisions, and they're not just on the board to hype up their resume to say that they're a part of something. Whereas you have an
saying planning
opportunity,
board, or you saying assessors?
assessors board,
You
sorry.
said planning.
Sorry, my apologies. Assessment. So what you're saying is that you want to take away your opportunity to question. Because you can't have any answers if there's confidentiality agreement in place. So now we're trusting you to trust another person as a taxpayer, and we can't have any information because there's a confidentiality agreement in place. That's where the problem lies. It's not about the board, but you're telling us, Mr. Elias, that you're comfortable making a decision without any knowledge. But yet you're questioning an agent telling you that you can question. It makes no sense to me.
I'm telling you, I am not comfortable with making a decision that our assessors, and I have no knowledge. I am not comfortable. And as I remember this whole thing, as it went down, the confidentiality was all about how you got there. There was absolutely no reason why the Board of Assessors could not come and say, we have to give the mill this much of a discount, and no reason why. Is that correct?
That's not correct.
That's not.
You couldn't say anything
Couldn't
about
say
the reduction.
nothing.
I was not the town manager at the time, but I was at many of the meetings, and members of this board asked Mr. Bill Van Tynen every meeting, and he said, I cannot tell you that, it's against the law. I was here.
I mean, we had,
That's the law.
if you remember right, we had books at the town office we had to sign our life out on
That's right.
to read. So, I mean, even when we turned to the selectmen doing it, we had books in there, we had to read.
Let's move this. Okay, well,
Okay. All right, number 5,
Going nowhere.
discuss tip proposal from New England Battery Storage LLC.
So last week I received a letter from Jeff Perry. Now, New England Battery Storage, they have 2 projects in Madison. One of them is the completed project over on Jones Street that stores about 5 megawatts of power. And that is a private business enterprise. That project over there is valued at about $3.5 million. So they pay about $75,000 a year in taxes on that. That is not what they're asking a TIF on. They have another smaller project over in the business park on MEW's property next to the end of the solar array. And that is about a third of the size of the one on Jones Street. And that one benefits the ratepayers of MEW by reducing the overall costs that are assessed by ISO New England. It's the simplest way to explain it. There's folks here that can probably explain it in greater detail, but that's the gist of it. So we have not put a value, the town has not put a value on this project yet, but if you assume it's a third of the size, you can assume a third of the value, so a little over $1 million. So they would be paying roughly $25,000 a year in taxes. What they're proposing is that the town enter into a credit enhancement agreement, and you see on your handout here, it would be a 50-50 rebate essentially. You know, we would keep 50% of that and give them 50% of that $25,000 for the first 6 years, and then it goes down incrementally years 7 through 10. I talked to Mr. Perry on the phone last week, and I explained that the town has a TIF policy, which is also in your handout. And in that TIF policy, it talks about basic provisions, why the town would give a TIF. And this TIF policy has been in place since 1998. And it says on under basic provisions, the board shall accept and review TIF applications for projects creating $100,000 or more of new taxable value. When determining whether the project should be presented to the public for approval, the board shall consider the value of the proposed improvements and the increased or retained employment or other public benefits in relation to the size. And what I told Mr. Perry was, this is not a job creator. This battery doesn't create any jobs. And it is it's a business that's already here. Now, in my opinion, the way I read the TIF policy is the town provides TIFs for 2 reasons: to draw businesses to come here and to draw jobs with those businesses. The most recent one with the Woodland Senior Center was definitive in getting them to do business in Madison, and it created 32 jobs. So that's my take on it.
Do we have any motion?
Well, can we speak on behalf of our request or no?
Evan Coleman's here on behalf of the New England Battery System.
So you can hear me a little better. So as you know, we completed the battery storage system at the Jones Street substation. That was a project just shy of about $5 million. It provides services to ICE New England. So basically what we do is two things. We pay about $78,000 a year in taxes to the town of Madison for that system to be here. And we also pay a land lease for 20 years to Madison Electric Works in the amount of about $1,000 a month. Essentially using about 100 by 100 foot area of land. So in total, that project creates about $90,000 worth of value. On top of that, we used a variety of different local contractors, ranging from our Lloyd & Sons down to electrical firm in Skowhegan. When we started the second project though in the industrial park, we looked at it, as you know, we own some land in there, and as the developer of the solar array. That project, the solar project, I believe right now it pays, just over $125,000 worth of, real property tax to the town of Madison. If you couple that together with the battery, that's a little over $200,000 a year of new tax creation for projects that really don't strain public infrastructure in terms of, it's not sending kids to school, it doesn't require police, fire, emergency, we're not sending a lot of trucks up and down the road outside of the original construction time. So what makes this battery unique that's in the industrial park, and what makes our group a little unique, is it essentially services the needs of Madison Electric Works. So we entered into an agreement with them. It's a shared savings program. So Madison Electric Works doesn't put any capital up. They take no operational risk for the battery. So if the battery doesn't work, it's not their fault. Basically what we do is we say, this is how much you pay now, and if we can save you $100, we get a percentage of that 100 and you get a percentage of that 100. If we don't save you any money, we don't get any money. If we save you money, we all share in the benefit. So in looking at that, we really try to keep our fixed, recurring costs every single year to the lowest point possible. One of the reasons, we chose the park as opposed to other places among the Madison Electric Works system, and I know that I've mentioned it when I spoke in front of you before, that we'd be coming to you for a TIF for this project, is it does directly help the actual ratepayers of Madison Electric Works, which a large portion of which reside here in Madison, including some of your larger industrial customers. So really, it doesn't seem like a lot of money. I know, $12,000 a year to go through a TIF. I think part of it on our end is we've really made quite a bit of investment. This I think would bring us just over $17 million into the town of Madison. Provided a lot of good property tax revenue. We haven't asked for a TIF in the past. I do know that throughout the project at Jones Street, there was quite a bit of frustration on our end going through the tax process. I have emails from 2 years ago when I was on vacation at Cape Cod, requesting, what the taxable value of the project was going to be, getting multiple responses back that we'd have it within a week. And then this last summer when I was at Cape Cod, I have identical emails saying, oh, you're going to get this in a week, and it's just somewhat humorous. So for us, this is a really important project to Madison Electric Works. It's a very important project to us. Provides a lot of benefit. We're taking a lot of risk, but there's also a lot of reward. I'm not going to try to pull that over your eyes, and we're just asking that the town, really, kind of share in some of the benefit and share in some of the risk by, reducing just a small portion of the taxable assessment on that property for the credit enhancement agreement. I feel like I picked the wrong night to do this.
What's the life expectancy of these?
Yeah, sure. So a battery is basically made up of thousands of laptop batteries that are in special drawers within a shipping container. It sounds really high-tech. It's really just thousands of little batteries with an air conditioner on a roof. So those batteries will last about 15 years. And then throughout the 15 years, what we do is what's called augmenting. So the computer tracks, because individual batteries will wear out a little faster, and we add more batteries and replace old batteries, replenish it. So 15 years is about the life of the system. If you augment the system, if you replenish it, you can probably push about 20 years. About 15 to 20 years the most you can get out of a system like that.
Any other questions? Any motions?
So I have a question. Other than, is there any reason, other than they're not creating any jobs, why we can't do this?
There's obviously no reason why you couldn't. They're taxpayers, they're businesses, it's personal property. It would have to go to town meeting, and then the town folks would have to vote on it.
And we'd be voting on this piece of paper that's in front of us?
What you would have to do at this point is to agree in principle to allow a TIF and a credit enhancement agreement. That the CEA is what really does the tax sharing, where checks go back and forth. So you'd have to agree in principle to that, and then we turn it over to the lawyers, and the lawyers would draw up the paperwork. I mean, even though the business park where the solar panels are right now is designated as a backyard farms TIF district, as many other non-backyard farms related properties are, it does not make the process any easier. I mean, basically you have to start a whole brand new TIF just like we did with Woodlands.
Well, you know, and I don't know where this came from, but when I drive into the town of Madison, and I see a sign that says we're business friendly, certified business friendly. I don't know who certified us.
The governor.
Huh?
The governor, that was the governor of the
Okay, the
page
governor.
project. Yeah.
We're certified business friendly. I'll make a motion that we go ahead and work on a TIP, tax increment financing, for New England Battery Storage LLC.
Can I ask one question? How much did it cost you in legal fees the last time you went through the TIF process? Do you know?
$9,000, and the Woodlands paid for it.
I think we'd be open to paying for that if that would, the town's
Oh,
not good.
that went without saying.
Okay, that's all.
I got a question.
Do we get a second for that, or are we gonna?
I said,
I guess we'll ask Mr. Savage's question.
I guess it's to the town managers. Do we know how many people are actually give Madison Electric compared to people that are still on CMP in town? What the percentage would be?
I think, and that I can verify this, I think MEW has 2,300 residential customers, but that's all total, Starks, Norridge, and Anson. Something tells me it's 1,700, so it's a little, I'd say it's about 55% to 60% of the residential customers in Madison are on MEW. I can get you the official numbers, but that's my guess.
Just curious, because it doesn't benefit anyone that lives outside of the Madison Electric District. And the last one was pretty difficult at town meeting at times, and that brought in 35, 40 jobs.
All right, so we have a motion. Second? No second? Any second? Nope, we're all set.
I guess we're not business friendly.
We're moving on.
I can say one thing.
Yes.
I think, and this is just my thought, we've invested a lot of money in your community at a point in time when a lot of people were leaving. I think this is a really poor reflection of that relationship. So, and I understand that your town needs the tax revenue, but I think at the same time, not a lot of people have stepped up with $200,000 of annual tax revenue. And I find that to be a very large slap in the face to some of the things that I've done for this community over the last few years. So,
I will say our last venture into TIF caused a lot of problems at the meeting. It didn't go well, and that was bringing in, 35 jobs? I don't know how this would go.
I just find that disappointing, that because it could be a hard path, we're deciding not to do it. And I understand that that's a hard process for you folks, and you have people in your community to answer to, but I just think that's a really poor reflection, so.
Any other questions on that? All right.
Sure, please.
All right, number 6, discuss economic development housing on Weston Avenue.
No, no, not.
I put this on the agenda just to inform the board, but I wasn't sure if everybody was on the same page.
They're buying out the solar.
Yeah, they'll probably buy it, so.
So if I can get that outside.
Hey,
Thank you.
thanks, guys.
At a previous meeting, this board had approved, in principle, to sell the property at 55 Weston Avenue to a contractor who's gonna build homes on it. Since that time, that contractor has reconsidered and is no longer interested in doing that. I have reached out and talked to a couple of other people that might be interested. It's always a difficult time of year because it's been a good year for builders and people are busy. There's a lot of new home construction going on in our town and other towns. It may not seem like it, but it is. So I just wanted to just bring this back to the board. As far as I'm concerned, I'll move forward into the fall and winter to do the preparations for utilizing that space as an ice rink. But I just bring it back to the board for some direction. Do you still want to continue pursuing development, especially of affordable, if not senior housing, for that property?
I agree. Julie?
I'm all for that.
Okay.
I am too. I would agree.
Okay, selectmen's concerns, Mr. Moody,
None, sir.
Mr. Elias.
Yeah, I make a motion, we get rid of the sign coming into town.
Mr. Savage. Susan?
I know it's not within our purview, but the town has resources to reach out to people at the state. The flashing lights at Clouds Corner are not working. And I drove through there the other night, and it was like driving into a pocket in a major intersection like that. There's no street lights, the amber and red lights aren't flashing at all. And I've been through there 3 times just at night, just to see, you know, and so I know it's the state, not us, but somebody needs to reach out to DOT and say, this is a real problem, because that's a dangerous intersection.
Yes.
I called them a day or two after the lightning storm and said that they would look into it. Back August 2nd, 3rd, I called them back again, you have the same response. So I have contacted them twice, they are aware of it, but what they're doing to it, or they're gonna do anything to it, I have no idea, but they've been contacted twice by me.
So it must be all of the streetlights and everything are all shorted out or whatever. Because I noticed it the other night, I was like, man, it's.
Yeah, they got hit by a lightning storm, like I said, back in July, and I'm sure they probably have it on a work order somewhere, but they're like everybody else, they're short on staff.
I guess, could we write a letter to the DOT and say, do you want to wait until somebody gets killed out here before you send somebody? Because this is, I mean, that's a serious situation out there.
We can certainly follow up with an email. Do you know who you spoke to? You spoke to Mark?
Oh, yeah, I can really put it down, I can
Yeah.
get together tomorrow and
Yeah.
discuss it.
Well, I think rather than putting you in that spot, because you have to work with those guys, I just assume if we write a letter from the board saying, hey, you got to do something. I mean, we've had so many accidents at that intersection, and for them to just put that on somebody's list to get it done, you know, if somebody has an accident out there, before they fix it, somebody's gonna be sitting in that chair out there yelling at us because we didn't get it done, even though it's not ours.
All right, we got that on the agenda?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thank you. All right, citizens' concerns. Citizens' concerns? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. We're adjourned at 8:14. 7:14.
Never had this much fun.
What is it?
Yeah.
7:45, sorry.
Hey, Ken.